Welcome to this week's edition of The Hill with April Ryan. There's a lot to talk about. Let's get right to it. Congresswoman Cori Bush is the target of an investigation by the Department of Justice. She's accused of using campaign funds on personal security. Bush denies doing anything wrong. The Missouri Democrat says the investigation is being pushed by the right-wing conservative organizations.
Since before I was sworn into office, I have endured relentless threats to my physical safety and life. As a rank-and-file member of Congress, I am not entitled to personal protection by the House and instead have used campaign funds as permissible to retain security services. I have not used any federal tax dollars for personal security services.
The issue of how Bush has been funding her security is also currently under investigation by the Federal Election Commission and the House Committee on Ethics. President Biden is blaming Iran for the deadly drone attack that left 3 soldiers dead and 40 injured. The troops were in Syria, further working to dismantle ISIS. The names of the Army reservists killed in the attack: Kennedy Sanders, William Rivers, and Breonna Moffett. Biden says he's decided on a response for the attack, but hasn't said what that response will look like. However, the president says he does not want to see a wider war in the Middle East. I spoke with Reverend Al Sharpton, the president of NAN, this week about the issue.
At one level, I do not want to see the United States engage in a war and risk more lives. At another level, I think we have to review more carefully where we put American military, which I think we engage in a lot of areas that we should not be putting American soldiers at risk.
Reverend Al also shared his thoughts on President Biden's upcoming State of the Union address. House Speaker Michael Johnson set the date for the State of the Union address for March 7th. That also happens to be the anniversary of Bloody Sunday. On that date in 1965, a young John R. Lewis led marches across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, protesting for the right for Black people to vote. It ended with a bloody clash with police.
We ought to use the date against the Speaker's party on what they have done to voting rights, what they've done to try and minimize and where they could erase Black voting, who were the ones that are the victims of Bloody Sunday, both the beating on the bridge and now the beating they're doing in legislative chambers by putting up voting impediments such as voter ID laws and ending early voting days and mail-in votings in drop boxes. So I think he ought to change it, turn his State of the Union, a large part of it, into talking about voting rights and saying this is the anniversary of Bloody Sunday, and on this anniversary, you cannot vote to inhibit voters. You cannot vote to try and weaken rights laws. You cannot, with the justices there, vote against Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and make us forget Bloody Sunday. And you cannot have violent mobs both at the Capitol January 6th or in Charlottesville and not know that this country is not going to have any more Bloody Sundays.
It's not clear if the Speaker was aware of the historical significance of the day he selected for the State of the Union. But the Reverend says, considering the political climate, the timing couldn't be more perfect for the president to send a powerful message. Immigration is that one issue right now that is dogging President Biden's poll numbers, particularly Republicans' concerns about the southern border.
Remember that this issue of the border was not an issue when 40,000 Ukrainians were coming across the border. This was during the time that Title 42 still existed. This was during the Biden administration. They were supposed to drop Title 42. At that time, they were still holding on to it for dear life. And Black and brown asylum seekers on the Mexico side watched as they literally laid a red carpet down on a lane that they opened anew to allow white Ukrainians to come into this country by the tens of thousands. And in all of these cities where people are complaining about the asylum seekers that they're looking at now, Black and brown, you have tens of thousands of Ukrainians that have been resettled. And I want to be clear, April, it's not that I'm saying we don't want this to happen for the Ukrainians, but the Black and whiteness of it is how white folks are able to have all of these amenities provided for them and others are not. It almost reminds me of like how it's with the police, right? The police know how to disarm a white man with a gun in one hand and axe in the other and two machetes between his toes, but they shoot Tamir Rice dead.
As the border continues to get the most attention from the media and politicians, a report from the Department of Homeland Security shows that the number of people who have overstayed their visas in the United States tripled in 2022. Georgia is the latest state looking to set up a task force to look into the issue of reparations. Georgia State Representative Carl Gilliard says the task force will work on what those reparations might look like.
It's a task force. It's showing us how to get there, and how to get there can deal with land, because there were several families that land was one issue. The equity part. I come from a city by the name of Savannah, Georgia, and just a few yards away is Port Wentworth. The term 40 acres of the mule was very much conceived there. And so it looks at a lot of different ways, April. It could be land, it could be finance, it can be the education, but a lot of areas, just like Tulsa, were unfairly taken away from people. And so in different areas, just like Georgia, it'll look a lot differently. So this task force is to find out how we get there.
Representative Gilliard says the effort is so new they are waiting for Republicans to give them the approval to meet. Gilliard is expecting a meeting in February if all goes well. Thanks for joining us for this edition of The Hill with April Ryan, where we amplify the news for us and about us. We'll see you next week. Take care. Peace.